It is the 14th day of August, the year 2018. Good evening. These are the top stories.
Tonight, the blame game continues.
The leader of majority trying to favor a particular company.
The aftertaste of the sugar report, but no one will take responsibility yet.
Kanini Kega should admit that he did not steer this joint committee the right way.
Also tonight,
time is gone where you say I did because somebody made a phone call to tell me to do something.
Cabinet approves NYS restructuring to tame runaway corruption.
And bracing for tough times.
If you look at it on the other side in terms of what has this debt gone to, you get worried that perhaps we lost a lot of money in chasing vanity projects.
High debt, a rising cost of living and increased taxation, and why experts say you should tighten your belts.
Also tonight,
unfortunately, from 2013 up to this year, this has been the most corrupt administration in Kenya's history.
John Gidongo speaks exclusively to NTV on the state of the nation.
NTV Tonight with Dennis Okari and Olive Burrows.
Thank you for joining us. Sign language interpreter tonight is Flora Tieno, and you can also watch us live on ntv.co.ke/live. That is ntv.co.ke/live, and do not forget to bookmark it.
Well, the chairman of the Parliamentary Joint Committee that investigated the sugar crisis in the country, Kanini Kega, now says he will introduce a motion in Parliament to discuss the characters of Majority Leader Aden Duale and Minority Leader John Mbadi, who he accuses of masterminding the failure of contraband sugar report on the floor of the House.
Kega alleges the Majority Leader had specific interests in the sugar report, linking him to a company that was under investigation. And as Kennedy Muredi reports, MPs are still trading blame over claims that a number of them were bribed to shut down the sugar report.
The debate on the report thrown out by the National Assembly on contraband sugar in the country is not about to go away, as accusations and counter-accusations of efforts to kill the report continue. Today, a team led by Mathare MP Anthony Oluoch and mostly composed of first-time MPs who feel there is more Kenyans would have picked from the report want it reintroduced and debated afresh. To this end, Oluoch has written to the Speaker of the National Assembly seeking waiver of a provision in the standing orders that says a report cannot be reintroduced until after 6 months to give parliamentarians a fresh look at it.
What we want the Speaker of the National Assembly to do is to allow the chairman to retable this report so that we can debate this report afresh, and we can also suggest amendments to better this report.
The MPs, most of whom accuse their colleagues of taking bribes to shoot down the report, claim those keen on killing the report were conniving with House leaders who led MPs in rejecting the report.
Ni ukweli wabunge walipewa pesa na wakaangusha report ambayo ilikuwa ya maana zaidi.
The chairperson of the joint committee that produced the report, Kanini Kega, still argues that were it not for the personal interest of the leader of majority Aden Duale and leader of minority John Mbadi in the sugar report, it would have been passed and its recommendations adopted.
The leader of majority trying to favor a particular company whom they wanted us to say that they were discriminated, who are supposed to pay 2.5 billion shillings to the Kenyan Revenue Authority.
Last week, I heard them say that it was probably Rotich who reached out to me. This week, I'm hearing him say that Duale talked to me to protect Duale's company. I never knew that Duale is in the sugar business.
Now he wants Duale and Mbadi scrutinized.
I am drafting a motion to discuss the conduct of the leader of majority and also the leader of minority, and specifically the leader of majority, because of the abuse of office, because there was some form of interference.
Kanini Kega should admit that he did not steer this joint committee the right way.
But even as these efforts are put forth, Deputy Speaker Moses Cheboy, who chaired today's session, has expressly stood his ground, insisting those with evidence on bribery claims should present it before the Powers and Privileges Committee when called upon to do so.
How do you expect the speaker seated here to start accepting that so and so picked this or so and so did not pick it?
I'm ready to appear before the Committee on Privileges to give the story of what I know about this. Numerous press conferences were called today as members of Parliament who have just come out from a weekend recess tried to distance themselves from the bribery claims that have been awash on media over the weekend. But one thing has come out clear. There is a group of members who want a commission of inquiry set up by the president to investigate this sugar debate and eventually come up with a credible report. While there are others who want the Speaker of the National Assembly to use his discretion and actually call back this report to be debated afresh as a credible outcome is expected. Kennedy Mureithi, NTV at Parliament Buildings.
7 former senior county government of Nairobi staff are spending the second consecutive night that is, in jail after being denied cash bail by Anti-Corruption Court Chief Magistrate Lawrence Mugambi.
The accused, who include former Chief Finance Officer Jimmy Mutuku Kiamba, former County Secretary Lilian Wanjiru Ndegwa, Gregory Mwakanongo, Stephen Osiro, Luke Gatimu, John Jogu and Grace Githua, were charged alongside Nairobi Governor Evans Kidero with conspiracy to commit a fraud leading to loss of 213 million shillings from Nairobi City County.
The 7 were instead freed on 5 million shillings personal bond and a 3 million shillings surety. They failed to appear in court last week when Kidero and his former head of Treasury Maurice Ochieng Okari were granted cash bail of 2 million shillings each.
Your Honor, you will have to listen because I'm telling you that my accused person came to presented himself to the station. You did not put that into consideration.
You are not appearing before me, please.
And that was totally unfair, Your Honor.
You need to make that.
And that is why you have kept this ruling until today in the afternoon.
Very well.
What you need to understand, Your Honor, is that the moment a person comes here for fundamental rights, you cannot tell us that you are busy. So perhaps the court then needs to again look at Article 20 and 21 and realize that this ruling cannot be fair. You have totally treated him unfairly, and at least I have told you that. You are a fruit tree and we shall throw stones.
The National Youth Service will go through major reforms aimed at helping fix serious managerial and operational challenges that have stalked the institution.
Cabinet approved the changes to the NYS, which will now be restructured into a corporate entity with a chief executive officer. The budgetary, internal audit and supply chains will also be overhauled in a bid to weed out corruption. NTV Seth Olale with the details.
I, Francis Otieno Owino.
Newly appointed Principal Secretary for Youth Affairs Francis Otieno Owino now has a new assignment to give NYS a new face. These instructions from President Uhuru Kenyatta are meant to streamline operations at the youth body. The restructuring of the NYS involves the establishment of an oversight board, which will effectively make the organization a corporate entity, complete with a Director General who will serve as the CEO. The Principal Secretary will have the final responsibility over all activities and actions in his department. There will also be a complete cleanup of the supply chain management functions as well as the budgetary and internal audit. These are just some of the measures aimed at fixing the serious managerial and operational ills that have troubled the youth body and made it a cash cow for corrupt individuals within government. These changes were approved at a cabinet session chaired by the president.
Time is gone where you say I did because somebody made a phone call to tell me to do something. Responsibility is yours, and you will have to carry the weight of the decisions that you make. Now, you are fully familiar with the challenges that we have had, especially with the NYS. It is my hope that with you there and knowing the issues and the problems that have been there, that we are going to resolve those particular problems and restore a program that has made a great contribution to a good number of young people in this country.
The head of state who witnessed the swearing-in of both Principal Secretary for Youth Affairs Francis Otieno Owino and Principal Secretary for Transport Esther Koimet at State House Nairobi directed the new PSs to resolve all the financial and administrative setbacks that have plagued the NYS, preventing it from fulfilling its mandate. The National Youth Service has previously been rocked by multi-billion scandals that have implicated senior managers such as former Devolution Cabinet Secretary Anne Waiguru and more recently former Youth Affairs Principal Secretary Lilian Mbogo Omolo and former Director General Richard Ndubai. Seth Olale, NTV.
The county government of Nairobi has suspended the officer in charge of urban planning for his role in the approval of buildings on riparian land. John Ojwang has been given a notice to show cause within 14 days, while disciplinary action, which includes termination of his employment, should not be taken against him. Ojwang was responsible for granting permission for the construction of the Southern Mall that has already been demolished at the Langata-Mbagathi Junction and Gem Suits in Riverside Estate. This comes a few days after Nairobi Governor Mike Sonko ordered preliminary investigations to be done to find out the staff members who issued irregular approvals.
Catholic archbishops say they fully support the fight against corruption, saying it is high time the government takes action against individuals who have been misusing public resources. The church leaders were speaking at a conference that brought together principals from Catholic schools across the country under the theme Parental Empowerment for Holistic Education.
The church, much as it sympathizes and has a lot of concern to the people who are really caught up in the fireworks of demolitions, because they might be not be the targets, but we condemn what was brought into us to that situation, namely corruption that has encircled even people who were very innocent.
We stand by the fact that we want corruption uprooted. All those corrupt been taken to court, tried following the legal systems, and any structure or any organization, whatever has been done by corrupt means, that must face the force of the law.
12 years ago, John Githongo cemented himself in the annals of Kenyan history when he blew the lid on the Anglo leasing scandal with secretly taped recordings of the shady dealings of high-ranking individuals in former President Mwai Kibaki's government. An event that was so unsettling to the ruling elite that in fear for his life, he went into self-imposed exile in the United Kingdom. It's since been 10 years since his return, almost to the day. As bad as the graft situation was then, he maintains that it's at its worst today. And so I asked him in a conversation earlier today, was it worth the trouble?
I think it was, to the extent that I'm very excited by the younger generation of Kenyans, especially those who are below the age of 35. Famous KOT, Kenyans on Twitter, are now the unofficial opposition of Kenya. Everything that happens, every building that's brought down, every person who gets arrested, they comment on it, and they comment irreverently, confidently. So younger generation, I believe, think differently. Also, it's because they realize, when I was leaving university, I knew that I would get a job. For many of you, that's not the case. For your children, definitely not. It's unfortunate that we've reached that situation. And so there's also an anger and a mistrust of politicians, of institutions, that's very, very strong. And I think that for me, that, even though I interact with them all the time, I can feel that that difference was made. It was made in a way that I had not expected.
And that brings us to the whistle the son of an accountant and economist himself is now blowing. And I bet you won't need two guesses to figure out why.
Unfortunately, from 2013 up to to this year, this has been the most corrupt administration in Kenya's history. We've never lost more money, and it's also been profligate and reckless and incompetent, especially in its acquisition of debt. It's forced Kenya into a situation of fiscal distress. It's forced us back into the hands of the IMF, which we had weaned ourselves off, and so for me it was unfortunate to see corruption worsening in Kenya, but now reaching the point where we are forced to make structural changes as a result of our own incompetence and corruption, raising VAT on basic commodities. The petrol is going to go up next month. The counties haven't received their money. We're being told, you can see that the Treasury is being sort of given instructions from a template by the IMF, which is very, very unfortunate.
Quite the indictment on President Uhuru Kenyatta's administration so far. But what does he make of the events of the last few weeks? The shift from mnataka nifanye nini to the president losing friends for refusing to stand in the way of justice.
We've seen this before. Our elite is very good at, arresting people, arraigning them in court. I have done this kind of interview over the last 30 years many times. And what do you think, John? This is so-and-so has been arrested, so-and-so has been sacked. So this has happened before. President Uhuru Kenyatta is the most articulate president in Kenya's history. He is the most articulate against corruption that we've ever had. No one speaks better about fighting corruption. There has been sometimes a big disconnect between his words and his actions. There appears maybe to be the beginnings of a convergence. And all we can do is encourage that. So yes, I would say that it was encouraging to hear those kind of sentiments.
That said, Githongo references the contested parliamentary report on the importation of contaminated contraband sugar as a reason to hold off on slapping each other's backs.
If this is truly a new chapter in the fight against corruption in Kenya, which the president says it is, then everyone needs to toe the line in this new direction. You can't have MPs being paid off 10,000 shillings to change a report into a scandal around the adulteration of imported sugar, for example, and that's an action that can be taken fairly easily. You have the blithering incompetence of the Treasury in the way we've acquired debt and the way it has been used in a profligate manner, whether it's the Eurobond and all these other giant projects.
And that brings the question of, then isn't he sending conflicting messages? Because Henry Rotich, who's in charge, is still in office.
I think getting rid of Henry Rotich and getting somebody that people take a bit seriously and is a bit more competent would be a good start. I think it was quite curious that the former DPP, Mr. Tobiko, was promoted from DPP to a minister. Yet, Mr. Haji, in a couple of months, has done more than Mr. Tobiko did in 12 years, was it? So, so these are conflicting messages, and this is the reason there is still a bit of caution about this sort of this moving around of dead wood within the system.
Opposition leader Raila Odinga has credited the anti-graft action being witnessed now to the famed handshake, comparing it to the steps taken in the life of the government of national unity. Does Githongo, who got swept up in that initial euphoria, agree?
When the the opposition united and NAC came in 2003, for several months, wananchi were arresting corrupt public officials, policemen, etc., who asked for bribes. I remember participating in the first demolitions. The demolitions that took place now started in 2004, and the first demolitions started in Kitisuru. When the current leader of the opposition, Raila Odinga, was Minister of Public Works, and started in Kitisuru, and then moved to a big informal settlement next to Safari Park, and And we had a whole group of GSU with us because we were concerned that there would be a lot of resistance because we were tearing down the homes of the poorest people in Nairobi. But when we got there, we found them taking down their own homes. And they were cheering us. So I was very surprised. And we had GSU with us, we were concerned. And when the Wananchi were very clear, they said, listen, we have heard what you people have done on the other side. And we are with you in this fight against corruption. Continue. Tell us where you want us to put our houses, and we will rebuild them there. And so they took, where we stood there just witnessing them taking apart their homes, smiling, laughing, telling us, give us. So Kenyans are smart people, and they feel and they understand when an effort to deal with something like corruption is real. And they respond to it, and they respond to it in a positive manner. When they're not sure, then they'll wait and see. Let's see how serious this thing is. And there's a sense in which we're still slightly in that wait and see mode, and with a bit more effort, maybe we can shift it.
Okay, you bring up the NARC government. Opposition leader Raila Odinga did so as well on Sunday. And he said what we're seeing is similar to what happened back in 2003 when he and President Kibaki formed government. Now, is it true, as he says, that what we're seeing now is a result of the handshake?
I mean, I think without the handshake, what is happening now would not be entirely possible. Can you think of bulldozers going into Kibera and knocking down the homes of 20,000, 30,000 people without a stone being thrown, without a tear gas canister being lobbed? I think it would be hard to imagine.
And giving credit where credit is due, Githongo maintains that a lot more still remains to be done.
We have a failed election system. We now have an election system which no one believes. That needs to be fixed. We're going into a census next year. Who's going to carry out the census? Chebukati and company? Can they produce figures that we believed? Those things need to be fixed, and hopefully the handshake has created an environment where those things can be sorted.
Possible.
Yeah, they're essential.
10 years ago to the day, Githongo announced a return to Kenya. Would he consider a return to government, given how things turned out the last time?
One never refuses to serve in public office, so long as it is one is able to do something serious, and not doing PR.
And there you have it. Back to you, Dennis.
Well, thank you very much, Olive. And staying with that story, with very little to boast of in terms of savings and a huge spending bill, many are worried that the country might be dangling precariously, staring down the steep cliff of tough economic times it is about to crash into. Kenya's huge foreign debt is considered by economists to be partly to blame and the reason the country is in the doldrums. NTV's Leila Mohammed engaged economists in a bid to seek answers to the question, is Kenya broke?
Total debt to the gross domestic product ratio was about 44-45% when President Uhuru Kenyatta was elected, actually much lower than that, about 43. It's now going towards 60, and I think it'll be a while before it plateaus. So that's why people are concerned.
When President Mwai Kibaki handed over the reins of power to President Uhuru Kenyatta, the country owed 300 billion shillings in debt redemption to mostly international creditors. At the end of 2016-2017 financial year, this figure had doubled to about 800 billion shillings in both principal and interest on debts taken in the last 6 years.
The current account was recorded, to June, was recorded at about 5.8% of GDP. And this is the current account deficit. And we expect the deficit to fall for the year to 2018 to 5.4% of GDP.
Financial indicators such as the current account deficit, which measures the difference between the total value of imports and exports, point to a nation that is straining financially.
So obviously that was already a signal that it's going to be a tough year, especially for government. One, because it's relying on raising new taxes, but at the same time trying to moderate spending. And so you can see the language of austerity, even if they haven't said it itself. But it's clear that government is asking all departments to to moderate spending because there's a shortage of cash.
For Johnson Derry, the corporate finance and advisory manager at ABC Capital, the question of Kenya being broke has a yes and a no answer. According to him, the country is spending more than it is dropping into its piggy bank. Other states have managed to develop in various fields like infrastructure by simply enabling the citizen to spend a percentage and save a little. With time, through pension development programs, this cash is tossed into the economy to build the nation, something that Kenya has failed to master. Both economists believe that private-public partnerships have not been fully exploited. Majority of development projects that run the economy are government-funded, meaning Kenyans will soon be forced to dig deeper into their pockets. Heavy government spending, coupled with counterproductive policies such as interest rate cap, has stifled the private sector's ability to contribute effectively to growth.
The international financial community has not shied away from expressing concern over how much Kenya is borrowing and spending in terms of developing the nation, and has given her some suggestions on how to relieve herself from this international debt. But for this to happen, economists now say that there needs to be political goodwill.
Again, when the cap was done, we actually think that members of parliament and everybody else at that time were concerned about the behavior of banks. However, the fix that the parliament chose, which was a capping of interest rates, in our view, was inefficient, and in our view, it has failed to reach the objective that was intended. Because banks were clear that the national government was borrowing so much money, and so even if they do not lend to the average business, they are clear that because the government has a huge deficit of billions, hundreds of billions, government would still have to go to them for that money.
Economist Johnson Derry says that as an organization, IMF can only share with Kenya its views on the country's financial landscape. As a lender, on the other hand, it is their prerogative to change the behavior of the one receiving the funds if things seem to be getting out of hand. In his opinion, the government should expeditiously sell off its shares in major parastatals, some of which are bleeding it dry, to help cushion the economy. Both financial experts concur that the government is spending a lot on areas that will offer minimal returns to the public over the short term, instead of effectively addressing constraints to private enterprise that will spur job creation. Leila Mohammed, NTV.
State of the economy to corruption, we just hope that there will be a glimmer of hope and it won't be all too depressing. But NTV Tonight takes a short break.
But when we come back, we'll tell you what the Catholic Church has to say about school indiscipline.
TV Tonight with Dennis Okari and Olive Burrows.
Welcome back. Nyeri Catholic Archbishop Anthony Muheria says the current cases of indiscipline in schools could be attributed to the disconnect between students and their guardians.
He also pointed out that school outdoor activities such as drama and music festivals ought to be regulated as they were breeding grounds for indiscipline.
NTV's Sharon Baranga reports.
The National Executive of CASPA.
After the end of what was a tumultuous second term in schools, head of schools in Catholic-sponsored institutions retreated for some quiet time in reflection of the troubled term that was.
The Diocese of Homa Bay.
Top of the to-do list to right the past wrongs was a proposal to rid schools of all toxicity. It emerged that social media was a cruel fuel to the flames of unrest witnessed in schools.
The detoxification of our schools. It's a goal we must seek to achieve. That is not a detoxification of the school, but all the elements of the school. The first being the principal. Second being the staff. And the third being the student himself and all other stakeholders, especially the parents.
The teachers also blamed the indiscipline witnessed in schools on the drugs and substances that they suspect are distributed during school outdoor activities, such as music and drama festivals.
When I was in Embu, I received a gift of twins that were conceived in a drama festival. Form 2 student. Got wonderful twins, a fruit of the drama festival. I leave you to your imagination.
Muheria says the string of cases of indiscipline was directly linked to a disconnect between students and their supposed mentors, their parents and teachers.
The life of those meant to be mentors has fallen apart. The mentors are we.
The three-day conference that brings together principals from all Catholic schools under the theme Parental Empowerment for Holistic Education is expected to be opened officially tomorrow by President Uhuru Kenyatta. Sharon Baranga, NTV at the Catholic University, Nairobi.
The Kenya National Union of Teachers Secretary General William Sossion has accused the Teachers Service Commission of enacting policies that he says were dehumanizing and difficult to execute for teachers.
Sossion, who also serves as a nominated member of the National Assembly, singled out the new appraisal system, delocalization of teachers and abolition of promotions for teachers with new qualifications as some of the limiting policies that are affecting teachers' performances.
Academic qualification is an intellectual right that must be compensated by the employer. And the Code of Regulation of Teachers in Section 73 and Section 74 recognizes this right. A policy, you are a lawyer, a policy cannot replace a piece of legislation or regulation.
And the NAT Secretary General is not William, but Wilson Sossion. I apologize for that.
Yes, Wilson Sossion was speaking there. We take a short break now, but when we come back with the business.
Good evening and welcome to NTV Business. I'm Dan Mwangi. Now, users of super petrol, that is, will from midnight tonight begin paying a little more at the pump, even as diesel and kerosene consumers enjoy slight relief, according to the latest fuel prices announced by the ERC. A litre of super petrol will now cost 1 shilling and 53 cents more, while diesel and kerosene prices reduced by 51 and 78 cents per litre respectively. However, the cost of fuel in the country is expected to jump by about 17 shillings for diesel and petrol for about 13 shillings for kerosene once the government implements a 16% value-added tax on petroleum products in the beginning of next month. The International Monetary Fund wants Kenya to do away with tax exemptions in order to grow revenues, reduce budget deficits, and ultimately slow down the country's ballooning debt. Now, brace yourself for tough times ahead as sugar prices are bound to shoot up, given that the level of the stock continues to drop, creating inadequacy in the market. According to the Sugar Directorate, stocks have fallen from 16,000 tons to 14,000 in the last 2 weeks. This comes even as the shelf price of the sweetener has stabilized, with a 2-kilogram pack retailing at 250 shillings from 270 shillings last month. The volume of sugar held by millers continues to drop as traders stay away from imports following the recent crackdown on the contraband sweetener. Some parts of the country, however, have already started reporting rising prices as supply becomes short. A number of policy changes, such as the reintroduction of the capital gains tax as well as introduction of interest rate caps, have combined to spook investors, according to the Capital Markets Authority's chief executive, that's Paul Muthaura. Only 3 initial public offerings, or IPOs, have been put forward at the Nairobi Securities Exchange over the last 9 years, begging the question, just where did the NSE's vibrance go? Here's Alex Mwangi with the CMA's reality check on what ails the stock market.
Looking back, from about the year 2014, where, the NSE was, I think, the 3rd best performing exchange in the world. That was really running on multiple years of fairly stable policy and fiscal environment.
Those were the good times, but in recent years, the Nairobi Securities Exchange has lost its luster for a significant swath of investors. Only 3 initial public offerings in the span of close to a decade is not a record worth shouting from the rooftop. It turns out that a number of factors have contributed to the NSE's malaise.
First with the capital gains tax uncertainty, then you had the uncertainty around bank resolutions, then you had the uncertainty around the treatment of the debt market. Then you had the uncertainty around an FSA, and is it coming, is it not? Then now you have uncertainty around Financial Market Conduct Authority. All of that all adds to, I think, investors' ability to make concrete decisions.
The CMA recently put 8 listed firms on a watch list due to concerns on their liquidity position and corporate governance challenges. Efforts to introduce a derivatives market have also been progressing at a glacial pace. All these point towards efforts to make the capital markets more vibrant, but where the rubber meets the road, the results have not been as promising.
We continue to be very conscious that over the last 2 to 3 years, there's been very significant market development efforts going on around new products, new frameworks, new initiatives, but the level of actual uptake and application of many of these new solutions has been significantly lower than was expected.
Muthaura spoke during the release of the Capital Markets Soundness Report for the 2nd quarter. Alex Mwangi, NTV.
Portland Cement Company has laid off 520 staff members as it struggles to keep its head above the water. Now, management says the board decided to renew the contracts of affected workers because it already had a high wage bill and a bloated workforce. The Kenya Chemical and Allied Workers Union has, however, accused EAPCC of nepotism and procedural termination and has petitioned Parliament to review the matter. Management, on the other hand, says it did nothing wrong as the contracts of the affected workers had already expired. Now, Another story, Barclays Bank has reported a 6.2% growth in its half-year profit to 3.78 billion shillings, and the bank has attributed this growth to increasing lending to government and a reduction in the operating costs. As a result of this performance, Barclays will be paying shareholders an interim dividend of 20 cents per share, unchanged from what was paid last year.
We are now showing a top-line growth, total revenue picking up by 5%. With contribution both on the side of net interest income, which is really on the side of balance sheet, 4% year-on-year growth, and also on what you call the non-interest income, picking up by 7%. Main drivers of that are fees and commission, and then even when you look at our foreign currency performance, year-on-year you'll see an 11% growth.
Let's build on that cement issue, and Athi River Mining has appointed Linus Gitahi as a chairman, replacing Wilfred Murungi. Gitahi will be expected to steer the company back into profit-making after reporting losses for 3 consecutive years. In the last financial year ended December 2017, ARM posted a 6.5 billion shilling loss, which was 2.3 times more than the 2.8 billion shilling loss reported the previous year. And that story will be the lead story in the Business Daily tomorrow, so be sure to grab yourself a copy. And speaking of the newspapers, let's have a sneak peek of what you should expect in tomorrow's Daily Nation. And teachers have defied a plea by Education CS, Amina Mohammed, to shelve their strike plans, vowing to ensure no school opens for the 3rd and final term. The Kenya National Union of Teachers Secretary General Wilson Sossion insists the strike is still on from the 1st of September if the government fails to stop massive teacher transfers and performance appraisal system. So get yourself a copy of the Daily Nation and get the details about why the 3rd term for public schools looks shaky. Just yet another reminder that the appointment of Linus Gitahi as the chairman of Athi River Mining is the lead story in the Business Daily tomorrow. Business and I are done. Good night.
We have to get...
Welcome back. There was drama at City Hall as divisions between members of the County Assembly over a proposal to impeach Assembly Clerk Jacob Ngwele. Maringo MCA Mark Ndungu alleges the clerk oversaw embezzlement of public funds.
MCAs who accuse Ngwele of impropriety want Nairobi County Assembly Speaker Beatrice Elachi to immediately ask him to step aside and pave way for independent investigations.
We can't still have the Nini in the office, and the DCI has recommended the Nini. You see.
Drama outside City Hall as nominated MCA Catherine Opio interrupted an ongoing press briefing. There was tension as the group in support of the clerk stopped those opposed from carrying on with the press conference. There have been concerns about happenings in the County Assembly and the Service Board, with some MCAs saying it is not properly constituted and has been procuring goods irregularly. The members cited mismanagement of funds by the clerk and demanded swift intervention.
The same clerk who is acting as clerk has been fraudulently misusing the public funds. And of Saturday, the DCI recommended the prosecution of the clerk, and some members, that is Ada Onyango, James Kaguma, Philomena Nzuki, Frederick Masharia, and businessman Raphael Mwinzi Maluki.
The MCAs claim that the County Assembly is a corruption zone.
What has happened here? Because people are being bribed with the trips. They have become skyscrapers. After every month they are going so that they cannot allow us to do our mandate. We are supporting the president.
However, Minority Leader Elias Otieno countered the allegations and stated that there was no corruption as all the legal documentation and filing was there and the clerk should not be faulted on mere allegations.
If they are, those are the book which was tendered, if they are there or not. If they are not there, let them just come and arrest the clerk. And if they are there, let them just give clerk his time to work.
Investigations over the matter are now ongoing.
Kenya is not a secular.
Helen Aura, NTV.
Across the borders, a day after they were picked up by security officials while on duty, NTV Uganda's Herbert Eziwa and Ronald Mwanga are facing charges of inciting violence and malicious damage in Arua.
The two, who have since been released on police bond, were picked up outside the hotel as they reported of the killing of Chiadondo East MP Robert Chalaganyi's driver. NTV's Sudhir, Dennis, will you help me with that?
Sudhir Biaruhanga
spoke to them about their ordeal in custody.
They had just completed a wrap-up of the day's proceedings, with campaigns for the Arua Municipality MP ended, when they were called in to witness a death near Pacific Hotel. Chadondo East MP Robert Chagulanyi's driver Yasin Kauma had been shot dead. NTV reporter Herbert Zua wasted no time in reporting live from the scene. Sensing danger, Zua's camera person Jeff Tumwesige grabbed the camera and headed in the opposite direction after security officials pounced. Zua and leader correspondent Ronald Mwanga were picked up by the security officials at the same scene, while Tumwesige was luckier, escaping the raid. What followed was a series of painful encounters.
Ran away to save my life, but I was overpowered by 5 police officers who beat me using sticks, others boxed me, others slapped me.
I'm having difficulties in my breathing. I was hit something on the head. I developed a wound. But it tells how journalists we are not yet safe.
According to Zua, the two had their legs and arms tied before they were bundled onto a waiting army pickup.
From there, we were driven to another place which we couldn't identify. We stayed there for another 1 hour when the soldiers were taking, I think, their dinner. And then afterwards, they drove us to another place.
We were tied on one rope, 4 of us.
From here, they were taken to Arua Central Police Station and later to Gulu, where they found a number of MPs also in custody.
There's Honorable Gerard Karhanga of Tonga Municipality, There's Honorable Paul Mwiru of Ginger East. There is former MP Machinde East.
Ziwa insists that the army and police brutalized them, despite identifying themselves as journalists.
As much as possible to identify ourselves. So we had a spotlight that would show us. We had our identity cards putting on our jackets. Me, I was beaten and I don't know how I lost my shirt.
Although I was on an NTV jacket, it couldn't save me.
Police spokesperson Emelian Kaima explained the circumstances under which the journalists were arrested.
People get arrested, and sometimes some people are arrested and you find they committed a crime, they are suspected to have committed a crime or they didn't. What I can tell you firmly now, when we interfaced with the journalists, we agreed in the screening, we agreed and instructions have been given to release them on police bond.
Interestingly, the police declined to release the journalists before charging them with inciting violence and malicious damage. NTV condemns the act and has vowed to defend its reporters at all times. Sudil Biarhanga, NTV.
Ballot counting is still underway in Mali in the presidential runoff. The results are not expected until midweek at the earliest.
Elsewhere in India, the death toll from heavy rains and the resultant flooding has risen to 39. And in Italy, a bridge collapsed in the city of Genoa following heavy rains, killing 22 people.
This and more in our international news roundup.
Many voters in Mali stayed away from Mali's presidential runoff election due to fears of security. The vote pitted President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta against opposition leader Soumaïla Cissé after an inconclusive first round last month, when Keïta won by 41% of the vote. Cissé, who also accused the government of rigging in the first round, also alleged fraud and irregularities in the second round too. According to the government, Mali threat by jihadist militants forced nearly 500 polling stations to stay closed during the runoff. Floods caused by heavy rains in South India raised the death toll to 39, while the number of people lost property worth about 119.31 billion Kenya shillings. Though the floodwaters have receded from many neighborhoods, daily life has been affected. Police in Britain said they believe a man deliberately drove a car into pedestrians and cyclists before ramming it into barriers outside London's Parliament. The driver, a 20-year-old man, was arrested by armed officers at the scene moments later. 3 people were injured after the vehicle plowed into the group of cyclists and pedestrians in the early morning rush hour before smashing into a protective barrier used as an access path into Parliament. Police are treating the incident as a terrorist act. A motorway bridge collapsed near the northern Italian port city of Genoa following heavy rainfall, killing at least 22 people. The number could, however, rise as rescuers comb through the wreckage. Only 2 have been pulled out alive from under rubble. The highway operator said work to shore up the foundation of the bridge was being carried out at the time of the collapse.
From that story, we are taking another short break.
But when we come back, Watson Karuma, who's looking particularly dapper today, will be back with the sports news.
Welcome to NTV Sport. I'm Watson Karuma, and thank you very much, Olive Burrows, for the compliment. Now, the national under-17 football team, the Junior Stars, thrashed South Sudan 4-0 in their opening Sekafa match in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. Keith Imbali, Matthew Mwendwa, Telvin Maina, and Nicholas Omondi were on target. Next up, Kenya faces Djibouti on Friday before taking on Uganda and Ethiopia in our final group games. Tuesday's second game saw Ethiopia beat Djibouti 3-0. The winner of the 9-team tournament will qualify for the 2019 Africa Under-17 Cup of Nations to be held in Tanzania. Now, Victor Wanyama, who is expected to be out for at least 4 weeks for his Tottenham Hotspur club due to a knee injury, is a surprise inclusion in the provisional Harambee Stars squad called up for September's AFCON qualifier against Ghana. Coach Sebastian Minye has called up 19 foreign-based players, among them Wanyama's brother McDonald Mariga, 18 home-based players, among them veteran Alan Wanga, as well as attached striker Masoud Juma. Local-based players are expected to report to camp on the 2nd of September, with their foreign-based counterparts joining them a day later. Kenya lost 2-1 to Sierra Leone in June 2017, while Ghana won its first match 5-0 against Ethiopia. Now, the family of the late former 400 meters hurdles world champion Nicholas Bett is currently preparing to give their son a heroic send-off at their home in Simat in the county of Uasin Gishu. This as the Ministry of Sports and the area local leadership visited to condole with the family and celebrate the life of the fallen champion, who will be laid to rest on Thursday.
Preparations for the burial of departed athletics champion Nicholas Bett are gathering steam ahead of his burial on Thursday. As a measure of respect, Sports Permanent Secretary Kiremi Kaberia led a delegation from the government and sports fraternity to visit with the family of the late Bett.
Lakini uamuzi wa mtu wetu kama binadamu ni tofauti na uamuzi wa Mungu. Kwa hivyo sisi takubali uamuzi wa Mungu, tuseme tulimpenda ilali Mungu alimpenda zaidi.
A message from the president, his deputy and the sports cabinet secretary Rashid Echesa was delivered, with the government pledging to give Bett a heroic send-off.
Bett alikuwa ni mmoja ya wale ambao tulikuwa tunataka kutumia kama brand ambassador. Yule ambaye angetuwakilisha katika ile ujumbe ya kusema kwamba tunataka michezo iwe clean.
With many dignitaries expected at the burial, machinery and personnel of the county of Uasin Gishu are working day and night to ensure smooth access to Bett's family home.
Kijana mdogo ama mtu mwenye bado alikuwa na maisha ya kuishi, imekuwa uchungu kwa wazazi, imekuwa uchungu kwa wanakijiji, imekuwa uchungu kwa kila mtu na Kenya mzima.
Sisi pia kwa upande wa riadha tumepoteza kijana wetu, kwa sababu sisi pia kwa upande wa riadha tunajiita family moja ya wanariadha.
Bett died in a road accident last week, Wednesday morning. He had just returned from representing the country at the Africa Athletics Championships in Asaba, Nigeria. Bett made history by winning Kenya her first 400 meters hurdles gold medal at the 2015 World Championship in Beijing, China. Lois Wangoi, NTV Sports, Eldoret.
Experience and youth headline the national volleyball women's team that will represent the country at September's World Championship in Japan. Laureen Chebet and Sharon Jepchumba, who completed her high school just last year, were included in the 14-woman strong team unveiled by head coach Japhet Munala. Sean Kadoveles reports.
Coach Japhet Munala has blended youth and experience in the Malki striker squad he's named to fly Kenya's flag at the World Volleyball Championships in Japan next month. The 14-strong squad includes the fresh-from-school duo of Laureen Chebet and Sharon Chechumba, as well as veterans Jane Washu, Janet Wanja, Deputy Captain Noel Murambi and Captain Mercy Moim.
Naona mumekwenda Japan. Let us support each other, and I think we are going to, we are going to try our best.
The volleyball queens who'll go to Japan for a 2-week training camp ahead of the Worlds are in a tough Group D with Brazil, the Dominican Republic, Kazakhstan, Puerto Rico and Serbia.
We have had no injuries.
And as per selection, it's me that has made the selection, and I'm happy with the squad.
While the Malkia strikers are lucky to train at the Kasarani Indoor Gymnasium, Kenyan volleyball is largely played outdoors countrywide. This makes it tougher for Kenyan teams to perform well internationally.
Volleyball is basically an indoor sport. Na hapa Kenya, we play outdoor. Our league is played outdoor. Our national tournaments are played outdoor. We only come to train here for a month or two when we are going for international assignments.
And teams for the upcoming Under-20 Championship in Rwanda and the East Africa Community Games in Burundi were also named. So with everything running perfectly at the facilities and also the players' allowances being paid on time, there really should be no excuses for the Malkia strikers when they go to Japan. Sean Carter-Villas, NTV at the Kasarani Gymnasium.
Now, the national 15's rugby team continues to prepare for its date with destiny when it faces Namibia on Saturday for a ticket to the Rugby World Cup. This as Kenyan sides Kwandanze, Kayatiwi, Laser Hill and Upper Hill maintain their winning momentum at the East Africa Brookside Games, and Kenyan young chess players get checkmate at the Africa Youth Games.
The national 15's rugby team, the Kenya Simbas, depart for Windhoek on Wednesday ahead of the Crunch Rugby Africa Gold Cup clash with Namibia. The winner of the Namibia vs Kenya match in Windhoek will get a ticket to the Rugby World Cup in Japan in 2019, while the loser will head to the Global Repechage in France in November. Coach Ian Snook has reinforced his squad with versatile players Dalmas Chitui, Felix Ayange and Curtis Lilako. Host Kisii County registered a 5-0 win against Kajiado in football at the Gusii Stadium as the Kenya Inter-County Sports and Cultural Association Kikoska Games got into day 2. With 2 wins in a row, Kisii County has qualified to round of 16. In other matches, Nandi won 5-2 against Embu. Nairobi County drew 0-0 with Busia, while Trans Nzoia won 4-1 against the Senate. In volleyball, Kitui won 3 sets to 0 against Trans Nzoia, as did Bungoma women against Vihiga. In basketball, Nairobi women were winners over Kiambu, while in netball, defending champions Nairobi beat Uasin Gishu, while Narok lost to Kiambu. And Kenyan sides Kwantanze, Kayatiwi, Laser Hill and Upper Hill had a good day in the office at the ongoing Brookside East Africa Secondary School Games in Musanze, Rwanda. Girls volleyball champions Kwantanze beat Kigali 3 sets to 1. Kenyan Rugby Sevens champions Laser Hill showed the intention of claiming a maiden regional crown after winning their first 2 games. In Rugby 15's, Upper Hill came from 11-0 down at halftime to Stan Menengai High School, 15-11. Elsewhere, the 4th day of the Africa Youth Chess Championships saw Kenyan players find the going tough. Parik Pranjal and Wanjala Dorcas trail Algeria's Nasir Rania and Nasir Lina in the girls under-18 leaderboard. Kenya's Tracy Njoki finished 3rd in the under-8 girls category as Namibia's Hilda Otile and Algeria's Hajut Lina lead. The players are battling for a ticket to the World Youth Chess Championships slated to be held in Turkey in December.
Now, here's some good news for football lovers, especially La Liga football lovers. And you can watch this new season for the next 3 years for free on Facebook. That is only if you are in India, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, Maldives and Sri Lanka, as well as Pakistan. That is after La Liga signed a deal with Facebook to allow viewers from those countries to watch La Liga for free. That does it for NTV Sport. I'm Watson Karuma. Have a lovely night.
That's all we had for you on this edition of NTV tonight. But stay tuned, because on Sidebar, are they honorable or dishonorable? Stay tuned to hear Jakoyo Midiwo, Jane Kehara, and who's the third MP who'll be on set?
Amos
Kimunya, yes, who will be debating the matter.
It's going to be a very, very